But yes, I'd like to be more and more like the forgiving heart of Joseph. And so this morning, I'm going to, in your bulletin, you have the little outline. I'm not sure I'm going to get to the back side of the outline because that's for your small groups. It'll be something you'll want to carry on and study. If I get a few moments to begin in it, I will. But it's the life of Joseph that I'm so excited about today. I have a dream. I have a dream, Martin Luther King Jr. declared. I listened to him this week on the internet. He said, a dream for freedom. Freedom, every man, woman and child, to be free, to be equal. And that means, of course, to be forgiven. And then I thought, I had a dream. I had a dream when I was 17. I was standing on the edge of a waterway and looking to the west, as far as the eye could see, a huge wheat field, like the beautiful wheat fields today, are just about to be combined. And as I turned back to the waterway, I saw it was not water, but it was hell, and it was the flames of hell, and I saw the lost bobbing in the flames and screaming for help. I couldn't bear the scene. I turned back to the other, and it is even worse because the wheat was not wheat. It was the heads of humanity coming slowly but surely to the edge of hell. But I noticed along the edge of the waterway, there were trees planted every so often, and these trees were groomed particularly. I don't know why. It was like a mushroom top. And they were there. And these trees were screaming and calling out, stop, don't come this way, go back. And I awoke in my dream, and I was saying, stop, don't go this way, go back. I thought, my, what a horrible dream. But I couldn't escape it. It was a dream that was to come true in my life. I wasn't going to be a Billy Graham, but I was going to be somebody along that edge of the waterway and of hell, helping one by one to turn back and give their hearts to Jesus. And that's been the greatest delight of my life from the time, and that happened back when I was just coming 17. An interesting story here in the life of the Bible of a young man of 17. He too had a dream. He had a very strange dream. He had a dream where he was out in the field with his brothers, and they were stooking the wheat, putting them up like they did in my younger days, in stooks out in the middle of the field. And he said, in my dream, I saw my sheaf standing up, and all the other 11 ones bowing down to my sheaf. And he's made his brothers furious. But it's interesting who these brothers were. It was a very dysfunctional family. You see, in the first place, his father, poor Jacob, got hosed into 2 wives instead of 1. The one he loved, the other one he accepted. And each of these 2 girls, Leah and Rachel, were given a maid by their father and mother back in their homeland. And after Rachel and Leah were no longer able to bear children, they gave these maids, their servants, to be wives to Jacob. And it was the sons of these wives that was given to be a wife to Jacob that were all the trouble. Because Joseph worked out in the field with them, taking care of the sheep, but he brought back a negative report about these fellows and made him furious and made him very angry. But Joseph was kind of special to his father, and his father wasn't too smart by making this boy so prominently special in the family when he had 11 others. And he made him a very beautiful robe. And as in the Hebrew it suggests, it was of many colors, went right down as a long robe. And can you imagine a fellow going out in the fields to see his brothers wearing this bright robe. This guy must have been half crazy, especially when he knew his brothers hated him and they resented him because he was such a favorite to his daddy. And interestingly, when they saw him, it was the sons of those women that were servants of his first two wives, the sons of those servant girls, their sons, that said, let's kill him. Let's kill him. There must have really been intense jealousy and resentment in that family. And they were going to kill him. But Reuben, one of the original wives' son, begged him and said, hey, let's not kill him. Let's just put him in this pit. And they threw him in a pit. But Reuben's intent was to come back and get this boy, get him out and restore him to his father. But when he came back, he was absolutely didn't know what to do. Here, his younger brother was no longer in the pit. He was gone. So he said, what did you guys do with him? And they said, we sold him to the traders going down into Egypt. And the interesting thing was, these traders, both the Ishmaelites and the Midianites, were sons and extended families of the three wives that Abraham had. Ishmael, and also that was the son of the one, Hagar. There was Hagar and Abraham and Sarah. One was Sarah, and the other wife was Keturah. After Sarah had died, he married Keturah, and Keturah had sons, and these were the Midianites. And the ones who married the son of Hagar, those were the Ishmaelites. So it was the Ishmaelites, and it was also the Midianites that came down through, and the boys pulled Joseph up out of the pit and sold him. This was a greatly dysfunctional family. But Joseph's father loved him very dearly, and they had a good relationship between them, though it wasn't probably the wisest. And Joseph had this dream, and somehow he apparently never lost sight of his dream. And this took him down into Egypt, and he was purchased as a slave to Pharaoh's main captain of his bodyguard. And he served in that house for some time. And then we find, even though Joseph was his father's favorite, and Joseph had in dreams that infuriated his brothers, we find that Joseph's dream, the brothers sold him for a slave in Egypt. And while he was there, he was accused of a crime he had never committed. Potiphar's wife looked on him. He was a very handsome young man, very shapely, the scripture says, and she wanted to take him into her bedroom with him. And in one final attempt, she grabbed him and tried to pull him into her bed, and he fled, leaving his jacket, his coat, in her hand. And then, of course, to clear herself, she lied about it and said that when she screamed, he ran and she kept the coat that was laying beside her. And so, of course, the husband's furious. What if you men wouldn't be furious? You came home and they reported to you that somebody had tried to rape your wife. You'd be furious too. And they throw poor Joseph into prison. And this man that was innocent, that had intentionally kept himself pure and godly young man, was thrown in the dungeon, and there he was for some years. And so here you have Joseph was imprisoned for a crime that he did not commit. Then we have Joseph interprets a dream. While he was in prison, a couple of the guys that were in there with him had been the king's servants. One was a baker, and the other was the one who took care of his cup and his wine. And they were both in the prison with him. And these two guys had a dream. They had a dream too, each of them. The baker dreamed that he had a basket full of bread and goodies, and had three baskets. And in his dream, he saw the birds were coming and eating of these baskets. And they wondered, what is the interpretation? And the second one, who was the cupbearer, he saw a vine with 3 branches of fruit, and he was squeezing them into the king's cup. And they said to Joseph, what does these dreams mean? And Joseph told them. He told the one with the bread, he said, in 3 days you're going to be lifted up, and Pharaoh's going to have your head taken and you'll hang, and the birds will eat your flesh. But to the other one he said, those 3 branches are 3 days in which the king will lift you up and restore you to your former position. And so Joseph said to him, now look, when you get back there and you're with the king, please remember me when I'm here in prison. He said, I'm here for a situation that I did not commit. Please remember me. And for 2 more long years, Joseph was in the dungeon for a crime he did not commit. And finally, God gave to Pharaoh a dream. And in this dream, Pharaoh had 2 things happening. He too had a dream. And in his dream, he saw 7 cows coming up out of the Nile River. And as they came up, they were fine, they were fat, and looked beautiful. But then following them came up 7 more cattle. They were ugly and thin and almost ready to keel over. And they ate up the 7 good cows, and still remained the ugly, weakling cows. That was one dream he had. And that dream, they asked the magicians, to please interpret, and they couldn't interpret, so they come to Joseph. And Joseph, in his interesting way, said to them, I cannot interpret this for you, but God can and God will. And then he gave Pharaoh an interpretation. And he also saw in a dream, a second dream, where he saw these field of corn. One had 7 ears of corn, fat and beautiful, and the other bit of corn had a very sickly looking branch of corn, and it ate up the good one, and it was still the ugly one it was before. And you remember the interpretation. Daniel said, Joseph said, God will give you an interpretation. He said, the 7 stalks and the 7 cattle are 7 years. There's going to be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of great famine. And then Joseph gave a plan. He said, now, Pharaoh, what you'll need to do is appoint the wisest man you have in the kingdom to begin to gather in the crop over these 7 good years. Gather 20%, 1/5 of all the produce that comes from the corn in the land over the next 7 years, and put them into your store cities. Store it and keep it, and then you'll have enough for the next 7 years of extreme famine. And of course, Pharaoh said, who do we have wiser but Joseph? And he appointed him to be ruler over all of Egypt, and only Pharaoh was over him. Joseph was second in command. And so we find that Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams, and Joseph is made ruler over Egypt. Well, this is what God then used to bring his family to Egypt.